Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Nomine Patris, Filii, Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Brethren in Christ, Laudetur Jesus Christus.
In secula.
This is Timothy Flanders with the meaning of Catholic. Jesus is King. You are watching or listening to the Terror of Demons morning show, reclaiming traditional Catholic masculinity. Joined as always by co-host and author of the book, Kennedy Hall. How you doing, brother? You still living the dream over there?
I am. I got lots of dreams. I'm going to tell everybody about them. And first, I apologize being late. We had an Amber Alert in the middle of the night. And I can't imagine I slept through my alarm without hearing it because it's so loud and obnoxious and always wakes my wife up. So I don't think it could have been that. I think when I grabbed my phone, I have that wonderful light phone now, which is amazing, but it actually has things like a lot of buttons on it, you know?
Yeah, show us your dumb phone. I want to see this thing.
I got a crack in it. I dropped it. It is what it is, which you can't really see it, but that gives me even more. It's almost a good thing. It gives me even more.
Is it a flip? Like
No, it's just a flat little thing.
It's flat. Okay.
It's like a little, it's like a Game Boy, little tiny Game Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Old school.
Game Boy Pocket. Game Boy Color.
Yeah. That's right. And anyway, it's like 1:30 or something. Do you call them Amber Alerts?
Yeah. You mean like when your phone buzzes and
because there's like someone missing
child?
or something? Yeah. So we had one of those, and God forbid something terrible happened. I don't know. It was middle of the night, and it went off and whatever. So I grabbed it. I like squeezed it, trying to get it to stop, you know. And I think I might have turned down the settings or something, because I honestly I can't believe I would have slept through it, because my wife would have just slapped me and been like, "Turn that thing off." But it did, so I slept through it. And then, but dream number 2. First rugby match this Saturday. It's actually happening. They have not said you have to have the jab in order to play sports yet. So at least this weekend, I'm going to be playing some sports, which is wonderful. I can't believe it's actually happening. I honestly did not think it was going to happen this year. It's actually a small miracle.
Wow. So you mean the doctors aren't going to call the game like normal?
It's just going to happen, apparently.
The doctors and the police are destroying professional sports.
They are.
Yeah.
And, third thing, actually, apologize for my shirt, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't realize I have a shirt that has a little bit of green on it. So the green screen effect is showing up on some of the patches on my shirt. So it is what it is. And then we got a house. We're moving, not in the States or anything. We're just somewhere in Ontario. I won't tell anyone where. Wonderful
top
house.
Secret place with the Mennonite stronghold, right?
Something like that. And real estate is so crazy. I live in a town that's an hour and a half from Toronto, which before lockdown was a little too far for commuting, you know. But now that everyone has to go in the office like once or twice a week, and like some places are just staying that way, you know, and whatever, remote work and all that sort of stuff, it's not a big deal to drive a couple days a week, an hour and a half each way, when they already drive an hour and 20 to live in a suburb near Toronto because of traffic. It's like the same thing. So people are moving out this way. And I love Toronto. It's a really cool city in a lot of ways, but I also hate Toronto because it's Toronto. And the thing is, when your town becomes, my town is still great, but it's becoming a little bit more of a commuter town. And that brings with it a certain, there's not as much of a community care about the where you live as much, I just find. Anyway, that's the whole thing. So but let's drive the real estate prices up like crazy here, which makes it impossible to move in the city, or it's 30,000 person town, I guess. But if you move out of it to the country where no one wants to commute from, then it's like the value of your house goes pretty far. So we decided to take the dive. We'll have to drive a little bit farther to church, is what it is. It's more of a picking the right lifestyle we want for our family for sort of as long as we can foresee in the future. I'll have my own office. I won't have to sit in the basement. And as fun as the green screen is, I will, I'll have an actual room with like books and walls and stuff like that. So I can just have a background, you know, with like actual decorations. So that'll be cool. And the basement of this house, it's a really great house, old, about 100 years old. It's in a one stoplight town out near some farms, and it's been all redone. In the basement, there's a room that I'm going to call the compound, and it's a perfect gym. So it actually is like tall enough to set up like the squat rig and everything, and it's just
nice.
a big concrete slab of a room, and I'm going to put all my weights in there. So I'm just living so many dreams right now.
Oh man, that's awesome. Praise the Lord. I'm so happy for the Hall family to be able to retreat into the compound fortified house.
Yeah.
In the Mennonite stronghold of top secret Ontario.
So how's the Flanders clan doing?
Flanders clan is doing very well. Please say a Hail Mary for my 17-year-old daughter. She turns 17 today. We're very proud of her. And since Kennedy was getting soft and sleeping in, I went and got her a birthday latte. So hope she likes that. And we're going to do birthday stuff today. And man, we are too blessed to be stressed. I'll tell you that. We're both
awesome.
of us are living all sorts of dreams, despite despite lockdowns and all sorts of craziness. Let's see. We're in the 15th week after Pentecost. And tomorrow is a very great feast of the church, the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And there's a great article series we're doing at 1 Peter 5 called Forgotten Customs, written by Matthew Pleasy of A Catholic Life. And he's basically just covering the major feast days and talking about all these customs that Catholics used to do, and then suggesting customs that Catholics can do in the future. And so he has an article on 1 Peter 5 right now, Forgotten Customs of Our Lady's Nativity. It's really a great thing because customs are so critical for Christendom. Customs are oral traditions that you do in your family. And these are the types of things I truly believe this is like one of the most foundational things for little children. We've got Michaelmas coming up, which means we're going to hold out the Satan pinata for my sons to beat down and get candy. What a wonderful thing for Michaelmas. It's like something that my 3-year-old and 5-year-old look forward to every year. It's great. So it's such a great way to teach the faith. So Forgotten Customs of Our Lady's Nativity. We'll have another one next week for Exaltation of the Holy Cross. We've got St. Peter Claver this week as well. Great apostle to slaves. We also have, today is going to be the first article from Roberto de Mattei at 1 Peter 5. That'll be coming out. And then, as always, got our Wednesday edition of Peter Kwasniewski. So stay tuned for all that. And also patron exclusive shows coming to Meaning of Catholic soon. We've got an Eastern Catholic perspective on Fatima. That'll be fun.
Who's that again?
Eastern Catholic perspective.
No, who are you going to have
Fatima.
on?
Oh, it'll be Lyndon Preddy.
Oh, Preddy, he's the best. Awesome.
Everybody's favorite Canadian.
Ah, there you go. No, he's from the West, so he's like he's your favorite Westerner. He's from out in Prairie Land.
You call him a Westerner? He's only from Manitoba. Isn't that like central?
Isn't he from Saskatchewan?
Oh no, that's Alan Rule. That's everybody's other favorite Canadian.
Yeah, Manitoba.
Alan.
We don't talk about that. That's Canada's dirty little secret. Dirty massive secret, actually. Saskatchewan, though. Saskatchewan is the, I mean, it's hard to make comparisons, but they had restrictions and stuff for sure. But there's like 1 million people, and the place is the size of like 2 Texases. You know, it's like a massive state, right? Or province, and it's completely flat. They have tons of industry out there. But for some reason, people just don't move there. I mean, it's cold and flat, and apparently it's very beautiful. I mean, people make fun of the prairies, but apparently it's actually quite gorgeous. There's lots of valleys and stuff, and whatever. But real estate out there is like, you can get amazing land, and if you do live close enough to one of the cities, I can't remember which one, you can go to the SSPX 4 Sundays a month. So if there's 5 Sundays, they're not there, but they do have a mission chapel. So it's like you can actually find tradition. There's nothing else, like literally nothing else. But you can find it. And so far, they completely dropped all the restrictions and have no sign of bringing them back. And it's quite conservative out there. And they have amazing football. Saskatchewan Roughriders. This is the Canadian Football League, the old CFL with the three downs in the 110-yard field, and the 30-yard end zones, and it's 65 yards wide. It really is. And forward motion, 12 players versus 12 rather than 11. It's a wonderful game. But the Roughriders, it's like
3 downs.
Yeah, so it's tons of passing.
I'm impressed.
If a running back gets more than 1,000 yards, but running backs, it's like who would be like a perfect CFL running back? Like a guy like LaDainian Tomlinson or Maurice Jones-Drew or Christian McCaffrey, one of those guys who gets a lot of receiving yards as well historically. That's like the prototypical Canadian running back. And it's also a yard off the ball when you line up, eh? So defensive line and offensive line line up 1 yard away from each other. So there's a lot of little idiosyncrasies that make it a different game, but very similar, obviously. And anyway, Roughriders, only gig in town, professional sport out there in the middle of the prairies. And CFL stadiums, 35,000 people stadiums. They're sort of moderate-sized stadiums. Usually in other cities, unless it's a big game, they're like half full, 15, 20,000 people. But they're full every single – it's like the same mentality of like the Green Bay Packer fans, but it's in Saskatchewan, and it's like the biggest gig in town, and everybody loves it. People drive from all over. So Saskatchewan's a fun place if you live out there.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Wow. I love this Canadian culture. Shout out to
you get the best
Canadians
here on this show, you know?
Yeah. Another, let's see. We've got Charles Colomb coming on Mean of Catholic soon. That'll be patron exclusive as well, talking about the Ordinariate. And we also have a very exciting collaboration with Vendée Radio. That'll be coming out as well. So fun stuff coming down the pike. And let's see, Kennedy, what's the latest on Canadian politics and what's going on with Crusade Channel? What do you have coming down?
Canadian politics, election. And I just tweeted something actually as you were speaking, because I'm a multitasker like that. And man, oh man, is it a crazy time to be a Canadian right now. It is like, it's surreal. It is absolutely surreal what is happening politically right now. I wish people could understand the significance of it. We don't have a two-party system. We have a multi-party system. We have two major parties, a third moderate major, but every once in a while you get these little upstarts. And we have this party called the People's Party of Canada, which is a populist party. They're neither pro-life nor anti-life. They are not really considering that issue as part of their platform, which actually is controversial. There's no avenue for pro-life in politics in Canada at the federal level. It's not a thing. And personally, in my opinion, that's if I was a politician, people would hate me for it. I were really staunch traditional, and I work for LifeSite. But I would say I can't. I'm not even. I mean, if it comes up, I'll bring it up. But it's a completely losing issue. There is no possible avenue for pro-life in the legislature in Canada. It's only Supreme Court. There's no legislation on it. It's too complicated to explain. So they basically realized as a party, there's nothing. Like, they're very socially conservative because it's a populist party. Some of them are like libertarians that are a little bit licentious, I guess. You know, like that sort of libertarian thing. Most of them are like old school Christian conservatives who are limited government advocates. That's basically what they are. Libertarian, whatever you want to call them. They're just common sense people. And 99% of them are pro-life, but they realize that there's just no avenue for it. And for the time being, there are a lot of like, let's say, disgruntled people who are definitely patriots, but are not willing to stake their flag in the pro-life thing because it's just so controversial here. So they're just like, listen, let's just get the people who are relatively sane and don't believe in lockdowns and don't believe in passports, you know, the type I'm talking about, you know, don't want to make this place a hellhole and actually think Canada is a good place. Let's just find them that we can have some sort of common ground, and let's get together. So right now, there's a candidate named Maxime Bernier. Now, weirdly, he might not win his own riding, which even though he is the leader of the party, which would mean that he has to win his actual district before he can go to Ottawa. He might not win it. That's a whole other thing, even though he's massively popular in the whole province or in the whole country. Last election, they had like less than 1% of the vote. Right now, they're polling, and polls mean nothing, but they're polling at almost 8%, and that's happened like radical rise. The conservatives are so bad. The liberals, people hate Justin Trudeau. He's getting like booed out of cities. In my hometown yesterday, he's such an idiot. He's so unbelievably stupid. It's unbelievable. And he was in the city I grew up in, and it was like a surprise campaign stop. This guy is the prime minister of the country, and he can't go do a campaign stop without people running him out of town. Like, it's like a pretty big deal. And
they're going to need to mail in a bunch of votes for him.
Well, you know what? We don't have mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
It's
they're going to have
very difficult. Yeah,
work on those Canadian-made Dominion machines.
We have the Dominion machines, but we just export them. we just export democracy. So
you export your fair and free elections with your
right.
Dominion.
We're just peacekeepers, you know. That's us. We're Rwanda, America. We're always just bringing peace everywhere.
Yeah.
So all that considered, there's this massive, like, I've never seen it. It's weirdly hopeful. I don't think the People's Party of Canada are going to win. But with this whole multi-party system, there's pros and cons. The pros to the dual party system that you guys have, as far as voting goes, I mean, take all the faults aside, you know, all things being equal. The pro is that the Republicans have to, like, even though some of them probably couldn't give a darn about being socially conservative, they're just sort of rhinos, you know. They have to appease the socially conservative because they'll just not vote. In Canada, because of the multi-party, this idea that you have to appease a certain group that's small, you don't worry about it as much because if you're a conservative and you don't want to vote for the conservatives because they're not actually conservative, you'll go vote for a fringe party that they know is not going to get any seats anyway. They know you're not going to go vote for the liberals is the point. But every once in a while with this multi-party thing, when people get pushed far enough, there actually is enough groundswell for a new party to spring up or a party that was obscure to get a lot of steam. And all you really hope for, two things. One, you hope that they actually get to Parliament and win. That'd be great. Two, you just hope that they get a few seats, and then the actual conservatives have to go, oh crap, we just lost like 1 million votes last election, and we could have done way better. We actually probably have to listen to these people because if we let this go another election, it's going to keep growing. That happened in the 90s with the Reform Party. The conservatives lost. They were huge. They had Brian Mulroney, who was friends with Ronald Reagan. It was very socially conservative time in Canada. But they sort of lost their way as far as social conservatism goes, and they lost their way in the West. They had the Reform Party. Conservatives had a terrible election. Reform Party sprung up. What that forced to happen was where the conservatives actually had to have a coalition and say, okay, we're actually going to be Christian again. Like, we're at least going to give you that. So my hope is, and then that was a good time for conservatism with Harper, and he was pro-life and all that as far as it goes. So I'm hoping right now that what's happening is working against the liberals with as much as they hate Trudeau. It's unbelievable how much people hate Trudeau. It's like I didn't think this was going to happen, but people can't stand his guts, and it's wonderful to see. And it really is. And our conservative leader is such a moron. He's he literally reiterates that he's pro-choice all the time and stuff. Now there are rallies going around. Remember the rallies with Trump? I mean, you know, people like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just a stadium of people. It's like, no, people still talk. You know, when you have 20,000 people show up at a stadium and they tell 20,000 friends, that's more powerful than a commercial. People just turn off political commercials. They're sick of them, right? They actually want to hear somebody talk. It's amazing what in-person interaction can do. So Maxime Bernier has been doing rallies all across the country. Media is not covering it at all. But he's going to like these small towns, and small towns are important because they have these little districts where you only need 1,000 votes to win these swing districts and stuff. And he's going there and he's filling like minor league baseball stadiums with like 2,000 people, which right now is hard to do because of lockdown. And he's getting arrested in some places because he's breaking lockdown rules, and it's making his thing grow even more. And
oh, nice.
So it's just like, it's really interesting. I mean, all things considered, with the 10 times less population that we have, when a guy like him shows up and gets 3,000 people, that's actually like a big portion of the voting base compared to Trump getting like 30,000 or something, right? And I don't think he's going to win, but I do think that they're going to surprise some people. And I don't know. I got hope in something. So it's interesting. It's a fun time to be alive, and people hate Trudeau, so things could be worse.
All right, sounds good. So when is the actual election?
13 days, my friend.
13 days. Okay.
We only have like 5 or 6 week campaigns. They don't last 4 years.
Oh, well, thank God for that. Well, speaking of, you mentioned two Texases a couple minutes ago. And so today's we're talking about the hope from Texas. So basically, as I understand it, Kennedy.
Yeah.
So basically, for people who don't know, especially non-Americans, the laws against murdering children in the womb were on the books in the states for years. Abortion was illegal. And then in 1973, the Supreme Court of the United States passed Roe versus Wade, which imposed a freedom to murder unborn children onto the majority of the states. I think it was something like 45 states. It was illegal, something like that. It was a ton. And there's some graphic where there's a map of states before and after. So there's been this big controversy, which we've covered before on this channel, about the breakdown of the United States going from the subsidiarity rule that was even in the beginning of 1776 to Lincoln to what we have today, which is basically just this oligarchy top-down empire that forces the individual states to do their bidding according to what the bureaucrats say. And some of those bureaucrats are in the Supreme Court. And so they dictate to the states what to do. So Roe versus Wade obviously is one of those. And so, but we have all these states. So like in my state of Michigan, there are laws currently on the books which make abortion illegal. So as soon as this court case in Supreme Court is overturned, then in states like Michigan or other states like these, abortion will just automatically become illegal once again, because it already is on the books illegal, but the Supreme Court is forcing the states to make it free. So with all that context, Kennedy, can you explain what exactly happened in Texas?
Yeah, basically, they passed what they're calling. I'm trying to find the article on LifeSite. I'll find it as I'm speaking. They basically passed what they're calling the heartbeat law. There's a letter, like, forgive me for my ignorance of American political verbiage. But essentially, what they did is they passed what they call the heartbeat law. So basically, heartbeats can be
the Texas Heartbeat Act,
right? And then there's like an official acronym for it or something, but some letters and numbers kind of thing. But yes, so here's an article for it. Texas, this is from August 31st, okay, and it was implemented last Wednesday. So I think that was the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, or might have been, no, September 1st, or September 1st.
Yeah.
And Texas becomes first state to implement ban on aborting babies with detectable heartbeats. So basically what that means, and I'll put the article in the chat. Basically what that means is you can't abort a child when they can have a heartbeat. So right now, it's easy to find that around 6 weeks. And it's to the point where all 11 of the Planned Parenthood health centers in Texas have stopped scheduling visits after September 1st. This was on before the past for abortions past 6 weeks of pregnancy. So that's just the basic baseline, as you know, 6 weeks. So what this is going to do, this is going to cut down on abortions by like 95% in the state of Texas. Also, there's a cultural effect too, is where it's amazing that it's called the heartbeat thing, because when you hear that whole term heartbeat, heart makes you think of life, obviously, even if you're utilitarian, I'm abortion until they have fingernails or whatever, random things. But heartbeat, that's something that speaks to a lot of people, like beating heart, like stop my beating heart. It's very much a sign of life. So even though it's silly, whatever, but this is a win. This is a big win. And it's also what's amazing about this. And I personally, we can't act like leftists insofar as we can't do evil things for good. We can't be consequentialists. However, I was just reading, someone I'm fascinated with is Ludwig von Mises. I know I'm not supposed to say that as a traditional Catholic, but I found out that he was the economic advisor to Dollfuss in Austria, who was himself basically a Christian corporatist and basically a fascist. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to look into this guy more. People poo-poo him because a lot of libertarians love him. But I'm thinking he was Dollfuss's guy. And then I was reading what he said about Mussolini and Franco and stuff and how he was anti-communist. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to look into this guy more. I think there's a little bit of a blind spot in the traditional community about that just because he's not an integralist. I think there's a lot there. Anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. So we can't act like leftists. We can't be consequentialists. We can't, but even a guy like Mises, he was saying when communism hit in Europe, he gave his tacit approval to the movements of Mussolini and he actually helped Dollfuss, etc., because he said there was a patchwork of fascism that needed to be put together to stop the onslaught of what was such a grave evil. But he said fascism itself couldn't be a long-term solution. It was sort of like this is the interim that has to happen in order to stop the monster, but he said it wouldn't be a good way. That was his opinion. Point is, when you live in an extraordinary situation where you truly do have a cultural revolution, a very Marxist takeover, you have to start taking your kid gloves off and you have to start swinging a little bit. Now, you can't do, again, you can't go and do something evil, but when evil is being done to you, you can respond in kind as long as it's self-defense. So what's happening right now is cancel culture, everything. Okay. Cancel culture is evil. We cannot participate in cancel culture. It's not allowed. We can't go and dox somebody. We can't go do things that ruin someone's personal life because that's wrong. But what they can do is what they've done in this, which I think is brilliant on behalf of the lawmakers there. There's a unique enforcement mechanism. So instead of having the state prosecute violators, it exclusively, this is amazing, exclusively empowers private citizens to bring civil suits against abortionists, punishable by a minimum of $10,000 in statutory relief per abortion, plus whatever additional injunction relief is deemed sufficient to prevent the defendant from violating this chapter or engaging in acts that aid or abet violations of this chapter. So basically what this means is private citizens do not even need to have any connection to anyone involved in a specific abortion. South Texas College of Law professor Josh Blackman has explained that the advantage of this approach is that Planned Parenthood can't go to court and sue Attorney General Paxton like they usually would because he has no role in enforcing the statute. They have to basically sit and wait to be sued. So basically, you as a private citizen, Tim finds out, if you want to do the whole COVID snitch line, you want to do whatever, that's wrong. You know what's not wrong? Finding people who are aiding and abetting the destruction of innocent human life and getting them to shake in their boots because they're going to go broke because of it. It's amazing. Like whoever put this together, this is like, they have teeth. This
really
is
cunning. Yes.
It's very cunning and it's not immoral because justice ought to be served for the aiding and abetting of abortion. And it includes if you were to drop somebody off at the clinic. It includes if you were to be the person having the private clinic in your doctor's office. It includes if you could sue the secretary who works at the clinic, who the doctor is performing them, a general practitioner clinic or something like that. So it's quite amazing. And it's already resulted in Planned Parenthood in Texas they basically got a restraining order. They got to the point where they had to get a restraining order to stop being sued because there was so many suing things that were going to come up and they were worried about it. It's a temporary thing. But it passed the Supreme Court. And once something passes the Supreme Court, it's pretty hard. I mean, it's going to be a while until you get back to have that same, like once you've tried a thing on its head, then it's going to be a while before you're going to have something that's going to reach that level again. And it's going to have to be different because they're not going to try the same thing over and over again. So it's interesting. Not to over spiritualize it, but God will bless a nation that stops destroying its innocent human life. And I really hope that this results in, some great results for the pro-life movement in, I was going to say Quebec, sorry, in Texas. And I wrote an article on this. It was a breaking story on Friday night. GoDaddy has basically threatened to boot off. It's called prolifewhistleblower.org, I think. And that was Texas Right to Life's whistleblower website. But it's been really cool to see so many, last year when Trump got kicked off and people kept getting canceled, all that kind of stuff, it was almost like playing catch up. But since then, I can tell you just from working with LifeSite and talking to these major organizations and stuff, people are building their own networks and servers and hosts and stuff. Like people are getting to it takes a while, but people are doing it. So we're starting to see the groundswell of that, and they exist. So Texas Right to Life is able to switch like right away, and they can't be stopped. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, this is very good. So another important things to point out about the cunning nature of this law, as you just pointed out, deputizing private citizens, very Texan thing to do, as far as I can tell, which is excellent. We're in the wild. I mean, we're at war here. We're in the Wild West. We need to understand that in wartime, we are going to get dirty in the sense of, we can't wait for this perfect solution. We can't, settle for going for. We're gonna, just put forth a bill that's totally perfect in every way. That's gonna outlaw Roe v. Wade and everything like that, because you can't then have the coalition and everything. But when you ban abortion at the heartbeat, which is generally around 6 weeks, so basically, what's so great about that is that many women don't realize that they're pregnant until they go through their cycle and they realize something. And 6 weeks is this time frame that women are going to find out they're pregnant or not. And then they're right at this moment. It's kind of like cutting down this window of ability to do an abortion to like 1 or 2 weeks. And so it's really going to cut down on so many of these grisly procedures. Like you said, 90 to 95%, and deputizing the private citizens is excellent. And it's really going, and LifeSite's already purporting that Florida is working on another bill like that. Mm-hmm. And what you just said is so excellent about the tech, because as I think it was your article that actually pointed it out, Kennedy, about how these economic giants, Ryan, you quote Ryan T. Anderson, who said, remember when corporate America remember what they did to Indiana over RFRA, which I believe it was the Religious Freedom Act, or North Carolina on bathrooms, or a host of states on transgender medicine and sports. Expect to see them do the same thing. So for you viewers, what happened in these other states was that, so in Indiana, Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana at the time, and they passed some kind of Religious Freedom Act, which was some kind of anti-LGBT. I'm not sure exactly the specifics, but essentially what happened was some big company came in and said, no, we don't want you to make that law. And the same thing happened in North Carolina. I believe it was North Carolina was the host to the NBA finals or something like that.
It was All-Star game.
Yeah. Okay. So there was some kind of economic thing. So these tech giants and these economic giants, which shows who's really controlling democracy here. Is it the voters or the local people who are voting, or is it the businesses? Well, these businesses can come in and say, well, we're going to pull out our economics from this state, pull out this from the state. And this is how they push us around. And this is great, because Texas is a huge state. It's got a ton of people. And so it's really hard to push around Texas, not like you can do in Indiana. You can push around Indiana. But Texas is a lot harder to push around economically, because there's a lot of people. There's a lot of different economic ties, which are tying the state of Texas to many different businesses. And if Texas can have that true Texan spirit to resist the Kool-Aid of this economic power that is going to be thrown at them, and then they can create, as you said, these alternative, and they can shift to these alternative tech free speech platforms and things like that. That is really, in my opinion, really the key to overcoming, to have that economic force, because that's how they've been trying. That's how COVID's worked. That's how they've been able to impose COVID and all sorts of things, is that they've threatened to take away your Netflix and your whatever, and your that thing that they lulled you to sleep with. That's how they're going to try to get you, and that's how they're going to try to get past this law. So that's exciting, because Texas, I think, can. There's the saying in the United States: "Don't mess with Texas."
Yeah,
that's the saying that Texans will say. And so I hope that there's this Texan spirit that arises against these economic giants that are going to go after Texas. The other aspect of the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court of the United States, the federal Supreme Court, which has basically the ultimate power.
Yep. So
what happened here, so that people understand as well, was that this was not a legal challenge to the law itself. No. It was so what happens is, when there's a law put in place, so this Texas Heartbeat Act was passed as a law September 1st. So what happens, as we've talked about with Traditionis Custodes, you pass a law and then you have an effective date. So there's this period of waiting before the law takes effect. And during that time, there can be an appeal to have an injunction placed on that law so that it's not actually effective. And so Planned Parenthood and other people tried to appeal to stop this law from taking effect, to just say, hey, we're gonna do a legal challenge, but we want you to just stop the law first. Just stop the law, put a hold on it, put a pause on it, because we're going to bring our big guns to the court case later. So typically, if the Supreme Court comes in and says, okay, we're going to stop the law because there's going to be a legal challenge, they say that typically when they stop the law, that means that they're saying, I don't think this law is going to stand. It's going to be challenged in court and overturned. So we're just going to stop it right now, put a hold on it, and then we'll decide that later. So what happened was they decided not to put a hold on it, and they let the law stand. So the law is coming into effect. Like you said, the abortions are hitting a brick wall suddenly. Speaking of brick walls, but Kennedy's got his brick wall up. So they're hitting this brick wall. The Supreme Court of the United States did not put this injunction on it. They chose not to stop, put the whole law on hold. So this is not the total win that we want, but this is very encouraging, because we do want a total win. We want a legal challenge to this law to stand at the Supreme Court. That's what we really want, which would potentially overturn Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, it's when you said it's war, that's the exact phrase for it. It is a war, and it one of the things I try to do, especially on my radio show, is not be as negative as it's easy to be, because I don't think it's useful. I don't give the left, the Marxists, any more intellectual or, let's say, strategic credit than I do anyone else. They're human beings. They're power hungry. They're evil. They're Marxists, whatever. We know what they're doing, and we know how they're doing it. I don't pretend that they have some sort of magical control over the entirety of the human race any more than anyone does. It's one thing that I find is I think it's so short-sighted, which a lot of conservatives, let's say, or whatever we are, do, is they'll act as if every time something good happens on the right, it's like, oh, well, it can't be true. Every time someone on the left says anything, it's like it's friggin' gospel for some reason. It's like Klaus Schwab said something. Oh, we're all going to be eating bugs in five months. And it's like, maybe you won't. Maybe you just don't have to eat a bug burger if you don't want to. Maybe you should do that. And I'm not saying that they don't want to do it. I'm not saying that there's not even, I'm just saying, take a step back, take the context, see what options you have. There's always a way out, and so on and so forth. I keep saying to people, they're either going to start shooting us in the head or they're not. If they don't do that, then they don't do that. I mean, they're either going to start putting you in a camp or they're not. And if they don't, then they haven't done it, and you can fight another day. And I've actually talked to a few people who were from the Soviet bloc. They've all said to me they don't see the whole full-on harsh Soviet communism thing coming. They just don't see it coming because they understand Marxism ultimately is a cultural thing through and through. That they beat the virtue out of us through pornography, et cetera, over years. They don't have to do it through a bloody revolution because we're not really a strong Christian nation to begin with. So they don't actually have to do that to us. And it's kind of the old thing, the French Revolution produced too many martyrs sort of thing. They don't want to do that again. So in any case, they're not shooting us in the head. And also, they don't have absolute control over the internet. You know why? Because the internet is Pandora's box. That's why I keep saying people have to read the Greek myths and Shakespeare more than Orwell and Huxley. It's an unmitigated power that is released with that tool, but it's uncontrollable. The idea that you could have this hydra of innumerable social media sites opening up or profiles in order to spread your propaganda means that if somebody can harness that power for their own sake, it can also work against you. And that's what we're seeing. And unless they shut the internet off, which if they do that, then they get rid of their whole thing. And if they shut the internet off, coronavirus goes away. We would not have known
how would they switch the internet off? Klaus Schwab has a big switch somewhere. Take off the cap and switch it off.
No, they shut the internet off in a few countries before elections. Not they, but it's been done. Actually, it's really easy to shut the internet off. There's 3 locations in America. If you just press a button, they're done. It's attached to the power.
Just shut off the power. Cut the
it shut off to the power to the place and the generators and whatever and the whole thing. So with this whole everyone, they kicked so and so off Facebook. Listen, we were acting in a reactive stance because this is the constant battle between good and evil. It's like that old show Criminal Minds. I haven't watched it in years, but I remember the theme of the show was basically the reason why the serial killers were always one step ahead is because the police officers who were the FBI agents who were in the show, they were good people. They couldn't think like serial killers because they weren't insane. So it's like, I never thought that they would sacrifice the child or whatever. I would never think to do that because I'm not a murderer. And that was always the drama of it. And you'd say it was always be this, and the hard part in the show was always when they would get too deep into the cases, they started to think like the serial killers and they'd have a problem with themselves. It was like they went to the dark side, so to speak. So one of the reasons why we keep getting caught by the Marxists is because we don't go to the dark side in our minds, which is good. We shouldn't go over that way. So that means they do things like deplatform the president of the United States. It's like, that's not a thing. It's like, can you imagine them starting at the beginnings of America? If the major newspapers in the railroad just decided we're not going to let him travel and we're not going to put him in the papers, it would have been a cause for another revolution, for goodness sake. But that was a reactive thing that happened and everyone went, wow. And then all the right wingers and stuff, we're screwed. They control everything. Well, no, just give it a few months. We've given it a few months. Organizations have got together. I know this from dealing with them through LifeSite, et cetera. They put their money together. They built their servers. They've bought their own actual physical hardware places. They have the exact same tools now as everyone else. And now Texas Right to Life gets kicked off of GoDaddy. Okay. They've got 15 other organizations that are waiting to give them a chance to come onto their servers who believe in the same things and own their own stuff. So there is a chance, my friends. Call me crazy. Sometimes in a battle between good and evil, good can actually have some victories. I know that's not allowed to be said amongst my fellow trads. I'm not saying that everything's hunky-dory. I'm just saying it's an actual fight. We're in it, and this is a good sign.
Yeah, this is very exciting because when GoDaddy and all these big techs do react and try to push their weight around, that's what generates this market for all of these startups to create something.
Yep.
Which could really create something new. A lot of new stuff.
Yes.
I think that's critical, like what the Crusade channel does.
That's right.
Independent platform. That's definitely what we need to create to move forward at this point, because obviously they're using this power against us. So I love what you're saying. This is very exciting.
Also, out of Australia right now, looking at Australia, by the way, Canada was just as bad as Australia. I think one of the reasons why Australia gets so much press amongst our crowd is because it's happening while we're on freedom break, because we're in the summer, they're in the winter.
Yeah.
Think back to the march and stuff and the curfews in Quebec and the arrests of people at the protests and the pastors getting arrested. I mean, it was just like as bad as Australia. We still had the Corona camps and then the hotels or whatever. But anyway, only 31% of Australia has taken the jab.
Wow.
You know why?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, the stick doesn't work as well as you think. I mean, it's amazing. People don't necessarily respond too well when you beat their brains in with lockdowns over and over again. They don't like you, and it's not working. So there's another little win as well. It's like, no, you think that they're complying. They hate it. They don't want it. And so that's way different than what people think about Australia.
Yeah, I think the news centers around Victoria, which, as I understand it, Victoria is the state that in Australia, which is
the worst.
Extremely locked down, forced vaccines or whatever, whereas other states are less severe than that, as I understand.
Yeah, Sydney, the Sydney area has turned bad as well, but it's a total mixed bag. So, yeah.
I apologize to my Aussie viewers that I don't know. I don't know Australian geography as much as I should. Because I thought Sydney was in Victoria. Am I wrong about that?
Melbourne is Victoria.
Melbourne. Okay, yeah. Victoria is down. It's a lot
southwest. Smaller. Victoria is southwest, like Melbourne is southwest, and Sydney is I think it's southeast.
Yeah, Sydney or Victoria. The state of Victoria is southeast Australia.
Oh, is it southwest? Southeast. Okay.
All these Aussies are laughing at us right now. That's
listen, guys, you can't laugh at a fellow Commonwealth fellow like myself. And remember that rugby is my favorite sport. Although, just to tick off the Aussies, I do believe that rugby union is better than rugby league, which is might ruffle some feathers. And I can't understand Aussie rules football.
Sydney is in New South Wales, just for geography lesson for the both of us. Okay.
Yeah.
Sydney is in the state of New South Wales. Mm-hmm. Victoria is south of that.
Oh, okay.
So they're both in the southeast corner of Australia.
Got it.
Yeah. My question is, I wonder if this is the most populated area of Australia.
Melbourne is known as being a really beautiful place.
That's my question.
And they have a pretty big seminary, actually, historically.
Okay.
It's known as being like do you remember that priest? It's kind of cringe, but he was that Father Rob Galea. Did you ever hear of him? He was he was like a singer. I mean, he was very conservative and like, whatever, but he kind of did the whole like he was on like Australia's Got Talent.
Oh, really?
And anyway, he's like bodybuilding and a singer, but a priest. It's very cringe. However, he was doing his best to anyway, and he was conservative. He actually came and spoke at the school I was teaching at and whatever, and did like a tour. Anyway, he's Maltese, but he went through the Melbourne seminary. And he said Melbourne is known for like beautiful coffee shops and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, half the country lives in. Yeah.
Here, Lowell says, half the country lives in New South Wales or Victoria.
Yeah, and that's like here, Ontario and Quebec have been the worst.
Well, that explains quite a bit. As I understand it, Australia has a lot of sparsely populated area like Canada. Mm-hmm. If I understand, so that makes sense. Okay. So thank you, Lowell. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah. Apologies again to all our Aussie friends. There's a lot of Aussies that watch this show live because it's 9 p.m. in Australia right now.
And they got nothing else to do because they're locked down.
Yeah.
Been there.
So very exciting time for the United States, North America, pro-life. And so we really need to support these tech innovations as they come down the pike. Bear with the tech problems if they have issues. Get through them. Absolutely. I God willing, I want to work on alternatives to YouTube. Obviously, we're on the tech giant right now with YouTube. But God willing, we can have an alternative to this. We can have an alternative to Patreon. I just need to figure out all that union or that tech stuff that takes time to figure out. So, but anyhow, anything else you want to say, Kennedy?
No, it's I guess keep the faith. That sounds really, really. But I mean, in the in the actual good things happening. Like, it's possible that they happen. Okay. If I can be positive from the other side of the COVID curtain. Okay. One thing that grinds my gears is, America's not that great. Well, sure, it's not perfect, but when your largest, I think it's the second largest state populace is Texas, and you just passed a massive heartbeat law, pro-life law. Very few places. I mean, Wisconsin. Everyone kept saying. I remember last Christmas. Oh, you're gonna miss Christmas again. I think everybody in America was at Christmas Mass. I think they were. Most people in Canada were, except for British Columbia. Even here, like, we were able to do a whole, distanced mass in a gym or whatever. It was beautiful. It was fine. Whatever. And the other day there was the first college football game in Wisconsin again. Now, I know sports can be an idol and stuff, but there was about 100,000 students. They packed those stadiums, in a stadium, not a single mask, watching football, living like normal human beings. I don't see Wisconsin locking down anytime soon. I mean, I don't know. And even in Alberta, they just put mask mandates back in. I was talking to somebody from Alberta, and they said stores are not even asking now. They're like, we did this thing. We put up the signs. We put the arrows on the floor. We put the whatever. Then they dropped every restriction. So we took all that stuff away, and we just literally stopped. We're done getting all the goo off of our windows from all the Scotch tape and whatever, the transparent tape that we had to use. And now you want us to do this again? It's like people are over it. And so you live in a fine nation, my friends, and be thankful that your revolution was on the old school Whig Freemasonry, where they had issues but still believed in natural law as far as it goes.
Yeah, they believed in natural virtue, at least, even though they were Masons. They
did. Honestly, that's one I've been researching to write this Illuminati book, which will be published one day in my life. And it's this. Hear me out here with the full context. When you read the charges of the old school Whig Freemasons, they had this weird backstory about Masonry and Solomon and like this rewritten Bible. It was very strange, very strange. But it was not communism. The trads need to distinguish between the different types of Masons. They're not the same. And they did not, like, if it was reprinted by Benjamin Franklin, actually, in Philadelphia in like 1737 or something like that. Might be too early to make my date wrong there. But the actual charges are ordered government, obedience to civil authorities, virtue and manners, and all sorts of stuff. Now, there's religious indifferentism, which is the seed of a lot of problems. But it is not Illuminist Freemasonry. It's just not. It's not French Revolutionary Freemasonry. So your nation is founded on, as far as revolutions go, yours is the best. So, yeah, and that's still there.
Yeah, it is the conservative revolution in terms of keeping the status quo against Catholicism. But
yes,
at least it's there is a sort of a traditionalism to it. Even though, reading my book, City of God, you'll see what I think about the American empire. But nevertheless, God can bring good out of evil every time. So let's offer up an Our Father that God may bring good out of evil. Pray for all our Aussie friends in New South Wales and Victoria as well. Lowell just said in the chat that only the vaccinated are allowed at church in Victoria. So we certainly need to pray and offer up Pater Noster for our brethren in Australia, that we can offer up and suffer ultimately for the only path of the resurrection is suffering. It's the cross of Jesus Christ, that we can internalize this situation and give thanks that we live in this time. We live in this exciting moment. Really, I think it's an exciting moment in the church and in the world, because I think we're going to see we're living in the days of our fathers, when Paul VI tried to suppress the Latin Mass in 1970, and what our fathers did at that time to overcome and pass down to us the faith, pass down to us the Latin Mass. Now we're in a similar situation. We can pick up the mantle of our fathers and continue to do the same thing. And we're in a much better situation than they were too. And we can think of our forefathers against Anglican England, keeping the faith, the recusant English Catholics. These are all these inspirational things that are bringing us to this moment. It's a very exciting time. It's a great time to be a saint. So let's offer up an Our Father, close it out, and let's pray for the 15th week after Pentecost. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, Spiritus Sancti. Amen.